All right. So my name is Seth Falcon. I'm the VP of Engineering at Seths. But this story begins in 2010 when I was an individual contributor at Seths. At the time, the company was called OpsCode. And the team was much smaller. Small set of very passionate and smart engineers. That meant our discussions were lively, sometimes chaotic. Some conversations perhaps were more like arguments. And I remember, I remember this meeting, right, where we needed to make a technical decision. And the meeting we were in our old office, and it was in the conference room that was in the middle of the building, so that meant it had no windows except for a skylight. I went into the meeting and I decided that I was going to do something different and I was going to focus on listening. I wasn't going to make my case, right? So I go in and the meeting starts, and sure enough, everyone is making their case for what they think is the right way, and I'm listening. And it's not too long before I'm pretty sure that we've heard all of the options. I know this because I start hearing the same argument over and over again. Right? You've been in this meeting? And so at that point, I go to the whiteboard and I lay out the options, right? Like, here's what I've heard. Here are the pros and cons. Here are the interactions. And with that clarity, the team was able to move forward much more quickly than we often did in such meetings. And the thing that I think about when I think back on that is that leadership doesn't begin with a title, right? And perhaps what leadership begins with is having an answer to the question of, how can I help a group move forward? So that was 2010. I was an individual contributor. In the next year, I led an effort rewriting our server stack and a live migration of our hosted platform. Went from kind of tech lead to actual lead and had a small team of direct reports. And in 2014, got asked to lead a new product development effort that was called Chef Delivery. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Grew that team, and a year later then took on additional responsibility, not just leading the engineering, but the product part of the role. And so I was in charge of product, and I was the general manager for that product. And then in 2016, I took on the role of VP of engineering. So here's how I got the job. So it's a Friday afternoon in December, and the next day I'm leaving on a trip for the holidays with my family, and I'm in one of our conference rooms with the door closed on my laptop, doing a video call one-on-one with someone on my team. And Barry Christ, our CEO, comes by and puts his head in the office and wants to know if I'm busy. And I'm like, I'm in a conference room with the door closed on my laptop. Yeah, I'm busy. So he goes off. I continue my one-on-one. A few minutes later, Barry's back, pokes his head in, like clearly wanting to see if I'm free, and I have this kind of light bulb moment. Oh, your CEO wants to talk to you on a Friday afternoon. Maybe you should make some time. Right. Okay, so wrap up that one-on-one rather quickly and follow Barry into another conference room. And he lays out for me that he really likes what he's been seeing in terms of the way that the team that I've been running has been executing, that he wants to see that kind of execution happen across all of engineering. And he draws out this org chart on the whiteboard, and there's this empty box where the VP of engineering goes, and he asks if I'm willing to help out in this way. For a lot of people, perhaps that opportunity being presented to them would be just a pure moment of celebration, right? Like, woo, promotion. And I was like, oh my God. That seemed really terrifying. The job that I had was plenty big and plenty challenging and plenty interesting, and this is a much bigger role, managing a much larger team. And so that challenge was terrifying, right? But also the opportunity was one not to be missed, and so I said, yep, I'm in, I'm gonna help, and I'm gonna do this, and I went and had perhaps not the most relaxing vacation that I've ever had. So my first week on the job coincided with what we call Chef Rally. So we're a geographically distributed company. At the beginning of the year, we bring everyone to Seattle and do an all-company meetings over the week. So my first week is that week. And that means that Monday I come in and meet all of my new reports, right? Meet my engineering management team. And Monday afternoon, I then meet with the VP of Product, Alex Etier, and I'll talk a little bit more about Alex in a bit, and go over the roadmap, right? And I've got to get into my mind all of the things that I had not been paying attention to because I was focused on just this one product, and now I needed to understand everything that engineering was doing, right? That meeting went a little long. I think I left the office at 11 p.m. that evening, and that was because I needed to not just understand those items, but be able to speak to them Tuesday morning at an all-company meeting. So first week on the job, Tuesday morning, all-company meeting, talk about the roadmap that I learned about on Monday. Tuesday afternoon then, we had the first chance to bring all of the engineers together and introduce myself as their new VP and try and give them some calm that despite seeing a roadmap that perhaps they hadn't seen before, that I was working on a plan, and I would get back to them in a couple of days. So that was Tuesday. Wednesday, we had some other all-company stuff, and then Wednesday afternoon, I had the chance to get all of my engineering managers and the product managers together into the same room. And we went over that roadmap line by line. We made sure that we had a shared understanding for each thing of what it was and why it mattered. And then we had a lot of work to do with that team of engineering managers to figure out how we were going to adapt the mode of execution that I had built up in the project that was leading to our effectiveness and bring that to all of engineering, how we were going to organize ourselves, what teams we were going to change, how we were going to reform ourselves. My team calls that Seth's 5-hour meeting. It was actually only 4.5. But we did it. We came together, and so then Wednesday night, all I needed to do was come up with a presentation and figure out how I was going to tell all of the engineers about all of their new teams and about the work that we'd be focusing on and the ways in which we would be working and all of the change that I was asking them to absorb rather quickly, right? So Thursday morning, engineering all-hands meeting, give them that presentation, lay out the plan, describe what needs to happen, get them on board, tell them how they're going to work, get them into their new teams, and get going. Remember, this is all first week on the job. Okay, so Friday, people are traveling, they go home, and to their remote locations. I have a weekend, come in Monday, and the office is much quieter because everyone's gone back to their remote offices. And I remember, sitting at my desk in front of my computer, and I'm like, what do I do now? It seems like y'all are doing what we talked about. That was really awkward. That first week, the lesson for me was this notion that leadership is about bravery. And right, bravery, it's not being scared. It's being scared and doing it anyway. And when you're leading teams, it's about needing to make decisions when you don't have enough time, you don't have enough information, you don't have the data, but you've got to move, you've got to decide, you've got to move things forward anyway. So that's what I took from that first week. And while simultaneously, right, you're needing to be honest and authentic about the situation at hand and about where you're at, but also that ambiguity and that confusion is not useful for the whole group, right? No one wants to come on that journey with you if you're super uncertain about it, right? They want to know that it's going to be okay. So that was the first week on the job. I want to take things back to 2014 and how I got there. So in 2014, I started leading this new product effort. The product was called Chef Delivery. It's now the workflow component of Chef Automate. And the project we were building, starting with 3 engineers, was a system to help teams do continuous delivery of infrastructure and applications. And I grew this team from 3 engineers to eventually 12. And as I was adding engineers to the team, there's this book. It's called Continuous Delivery by David Farley and Jez Humble. You know this book? It's a good book. And so I got this book for the team, and we read through it and kind of used it for motivation, and that was cool. And we're building our system, and things are going great. And Jez Humble joins Chef. So this is amazing, because here's this person I look up to and who has all this knowledge and who wrote the book. Of course, that also meant that I got to be the guy to explain our continuous delivery system to Jez Humble. My other memory of kind of sort of teaching moment with Jez, right, is I was really excited to show him the Kanban board that we had built with the team. And so I'm explaining the swim lanes and the states of work that the cards go through and all this, and he's listening and nodding. And then he says, so Seth, he points to a card in the backlog, this card here, about how long until the team will deliver this card? And I'm kind of stopped in my tracks. I can't answer, I don't know. And I don't know if you know Jez, he has this very adorable accent, and he says something to the effect of, well, then all of this is effing useless. All right, yeah, right, because the bigger point of why do we do these processes, why do we do these things, there are these overriding bigger picture things. Like if you can't answer questions about lead time, maybe you've lost your way, at least a little bit. So I had to kind of go back to the drawing board a little bit. And at that time, another person that I started working more closely with was Alex Etier. I mentioned him earlier. And so Alex and I started having some conversations about the Kanban board and what we could do to improve. And he had worked a lot with small teams in his previous companies and done a lot of XP and a lot of Agile. And so he's explaining to me ways that we can change. And the conversations between us, we had a great working relationship, but they tended to go like, Alex would say, Seth, I really think we should blah, blah, blah. And I would say things like, Alex, that sounds great, but it'll never work here. Or like, Alex, that sounds like something great in a textbook, but I don't think that's real world, right? But we had a lot of mutual respect, and so one, that meant that I was able to say that. I was able to hear him out, but really disagree. And then I would go away, and I would kind of churn over these ideas, and the pattern was sort of that then the next day or the next time we talked, I would say, Alex, that thing you said, I've been thinking about it, and actually, if we did thus and such, yeah, that would totally work, and we should totally try that. So we worked together and we rebuilt our Kanban board. And one of the things that Alex helped me see was that the board was really overly focused on tasks. It was all about the tasks. And what was missing was the bigger picture of really the feature, the user value. So we rebuilt the board and made it about user value and about the features. And it was much simpler, and I think we had a much better chance of really being able to talk about lead time and some of the higher level metrics that are useful, right? So during a team meeting then, I'm super excited to show this board to the team. Hey everyone, like check out this new board. It's not tasks, it's features. It's so great, and it's gonna change our lives. It's gonna be really good, and like we should start using it next week, right? And the team's like, no, we want our task. We won't be able to know what we're doing. We won't be able to collaborate the way we've been. We won't know what works in flight. Like, no, that's like, nah. And so I had a choice to make, right? Like I could have laid down the law. I could have said, this is the new board, eat it. But I reflected on the pattern of conversation that Alex and I had and the respect that we had in our relationship, and how Alex gave me the time and the space to catch up, right? Like if you're a smart person, you don't change your mind immediately. You need a little time to think it over and to make it your own. So I decided to do that with the team, and I said, okay, like, you've not seen this new board. Keep going with the current board. Everything is fine. And I let that go for a week. And then what I started doing is at stand-up, I started showing and walking the new board, because the new board tracked the same work as the board the team was using, but just at a different level of granularity, essentially, right? So every stand-up, walking the new board. And I do this for, I don't know, let's say 3 weeks. And what I notice is people are starting to engage with this new board. And during a team meeting, I'm asking, hey, so it seems like we're using the new board. How about the old board? Are y'all still using that? And everyone's like, no, not really. And so I have to like work really hard to stay like calm, because really I'm like, yes. Right. So look, does it always work that way? Like, probably not. But it worked that way this time, so I get to tell you the story. And when you're moving a team from A to B, when you can give them the space to catch up, right? When you can set the direction but give them the space to catch up, and then use your focus and your praise as kind of your power moves, like that's a really effective way of helping a team move forward. So during this time, it's really my first time leading as a people manager a larger team, and someone else at Chef at the time, Jeff Hackert, we started working really closely together, and Jeff kind of became a coach and a mentor for me, and so he was outside of the team, but someone that I could talk to about the situations, about what was going on, and be a sounding board and get some advice. And if you find yourself either now or in the future leading a team, you should know that like that's a thing that's real, is to have someone to talk to, and it's super valuable. So if you don't have that, seek it out, because it's amazing. And Jeff would always be talking to me about building my leadership bench, right? Like succession planning. And this is really good advice, and it's hard. And so what did that look like? What did that look like for me? I had a team of 12 engineers. I knew that over time, if we grew any further, for sure we had to split the team apart. And as my role was expanding in the product dimension, like couldn't keep doing that. So if you're going to build your leadership bench, you have to find your potential leaders to develop. And for me, what I looked for were those engineers that were really setting the example of and doing the work in the way that I wanted to see more of, and demonstrating the kinds of interactions that I wanted to see, right? And then also paying attention to, like, when I stepped away from the team and the team got stuck or confused or needed to make a decision, like, who helped that team move forward, or who did people go to, right? So I found a couple of engineers, Chris and Oliver. And so then that meant I needed to develop them. So what did that look like, right? of course, that means finding opportunities to delegate and give them opportunities to do more. And I created a separate Slack room and brought them into it, and I started meeting with them weekly and really bringing them into the context of and giving them additional information about what was going on. But at the same time, I was really clear with them that this was not, they were still the same engineers, this was not yet a promotion, and that we would, I was expecting over the course of some number of months, the team would be ready, they would be ready, and we would split things up, right? I really wanted them to continue to lead through their influence as long as possible. So, this was January, and I'm thinking end of March, mid-April, something like this, the team will be ready, they'll have had enough experience, and we'll kind of split things then. And in February, Chris and Oliver came to me and in one of our meetings, and they said, Seth, you really have become a bottleneck. Like, you're spending so much time with customers, you're farther away from the work, and you need to do something about it. And they were right. So in my case, the way that I knew that they were ready, that it was time, is because they told me so. And they were right, and the point was they were doing the things, right? They were demonstrating the kinds of behavior and succeeding in leading, and so that was great. So so I split the teams, and we had 2 teams, and Chris and Oliver did a great job collaborating and really helping each other become better leaders. And the teams were our velocity was good, and we were moving faster because I wasn't a bottleneck, and the teams were making better decisions, and we were shipping, and it was feeling really good. And then I had a meeting with Chris, and he told me that he was taking a job elsewhere. And in fact, that he was taking a job to go back to being an IC. And despite really doing a great job as a manager, that wasn't doing it for him. That wasn't his thing. Little aside here also, so after the fact, talking to one of the engineers who was on the team at the time, from my perspective, the way this went, the way that these leaders grew and we split the teams, it went really smoothly and really well. But that wasn't his experience. He was like, that was a really hard time on the team. It was really confusing, and Chris and Oliver kept getting things delegated to, and there wasn't that much space for me, and that was true. I think it's important to recognize that good leadership is imperfect, and you can't make everyone happy. So I was both crushed that this thing that I thought I had done so well was really hard on him, but also that's kind of how it goes, right? You can't be perfect. So I'd missed a signal with Chris, and I don't know if I could have changed the outcome, but certainly when you're helping someone go from an IC to a manager, that role change is really big, and paying really close attention to the people during that time is really critical, and even if they're doing a good job. So Chris left, and that gave Oliver a chance to step up more, and he did, and he was doing amazing. And I remember also calling Jeff, right? So who I'd been interacting with as coach and mentor, and Jeff, Chris left, and blah, blah, blah. And you know what Jeff says? Seth, have you been building your leadership bench? And I'm like, oh, right? No. I mean, I hadn't had time. But again, that advice, you can't hear that advice enough. And it's hard, especially when you're building a new team, right? When you're growing a team, it can be hard to really put that in place, but keep focusing on that. So anyway, meanwhile, Oliver's doing great, and he decides that he wants to bring pair programming as a practice to be really something that we do more broadly in our engineering teams. And so he starts in on this, and I start hearing from some of the engineers oh man, this pairing stuff, it's hard, or I haven't done it before, or I don't like it. And I start getting kind of nervous, like, Oliver's going to like mess it all up here, right? And so this was another time when having that external person to talk to was really useful, because I remember talking to Jeff about this, and he was like, Seth, you listen, you promoted Oliver because you trust him, and you need to kind of trust him enough to let him do some stuff, right? And it sort of clicked for me. Like I remember as I became a manager, really needing to figure out how to delegate, and that it's so much better to give someone a problem and let them go, solve it, rather than giving them a problem and a solution and say, like, please do this, right? That's far less fun. And that you need to give them that space. And what I was starting to learn then in that moment was, when you're managing managers, you have to give away even more. You have to give even more space, because a manager's ability to give space to their people is kind of constrained by the amount of space that their manager gives to them. So I reset, and I said, Oliver, like, I know I expressed some concerns before, but like, I trust you, and I'm going to back you up here, and you should go do this thing, and let's see what happens, and either way it's going to be okay, but like, go do this thing. And he did, and it wasn't that it was easy, like there was definitely friction on the teams, but it worked, and it helped our execution, and to this day, pair programming is something that's really now part of our engineering culture, and it's really helped us, and so that was cool. So look, my career has really experience has been from someone who's self-taught. I don't, as an individual contributor, I don't have a computer science background. My degree's in math, and I don't have formal management or training, right? And when I think about the things that kind of led to some of the successful outcomes that I've had, I think there are a few things I'd highlight. So, building trust on the teams was something that was clearly a key element, and that the teams, that the individuals trusted each other and had, I hope, some trust in me. I think that really allowed the teams to absorb change in a way that was really powerful. And I focused a lot on making sure it was clear what needed to be done and why. And I think I got comfortable, although the first few times it was super uncomfortable, with being willing to change with that direction, with being like, hey, what I said before, like either I was wrong, or I've just got new information now, and even though yesterday I said we're going this way because of these reasons, today with the new information we're going to go over here for these reasons, and making that clear to the team and having the team be cool with adapting to that. And like that's in a lot of ways the heart of what agility is about, is having the trust and the clarity to do that. So I was at a conference this summer, and this woman I saw speak, Esther Derby, was speaking on leadership, and she talked about the 3 C's. And so I'm going to leave you with the 3 C's. The 3 C's are clarity, conditions, and constraints. So clarity, does everyone know what to do and why? And conditions, of course, is, do they have what they need? Do they have the compute resources? Do you have a big enough team? Do you have all, right, that? And then constraints is have you made it clear where the guardrails are, where the fences and boundaries are? What are the things that always have to be done or should never be done, right? So this little mini framework, it really resonated with me. It resonated with, kind of retrospectively on what I think helped me be successful. And so I'll leave that with you, that, and I think it's useful both as individual contributors and as managers, that when things get confusing, like this is a fantastic frame to think about what elements here could be helpful to make things better. So, thank you. if we have time for questions or not.
I think we have time as Jerry comes in and gets set up.